Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell. This week we've got two old friends who've contributed more than their fair share to the emo world and beyond, and live to tell the tale. Evan Weiss and Chris Carrabba. Carrabba is, of course, the main creative force behind Dashboard Confessional, whose early albums, specifically The Swiss Army Romance and The Places You Have Come to Fear the Most, basically invented the genre's confessional acoustic-based era. He could have made those records a dozen times over the past 20 years, but instead Carrabba filled out Dashboard's sound, stretching out where the muse took him. Now an elder statesman of sorts, Carrabba returned to that simpler sound, but brought years of wisdom with him for 2022's All the Truth That I Can Tell, which he talks about in this great chat. Dashboard will head out on a long summer tour with Goo Goo Dolls starting July 13th, but not before playing a show with Weiss's band in Vegas the day before. Now, Weiss's band would be Symmetry, a trio he's been part of for the past decade or so, and which just released an excellent new album. Big Symmetry is a big, lovable, tuneful set of songs that all start with the word big. It's a kind of joyful blast of pop-punk that feels like a deliberate antidote to tough times. It may also be a bit of a reaction to what fans would consider Weiss's main band, Into It Over It, which flies that emo flag a bit higher. But whatever, those tags are pretty silly when we ought to be talking about songs. Speaking of, check out a little bit of the song Big Wish from the album Big Symmetry right here. In this wide-ranging chat, Carrabba and Weiss talk about the holiness of punk community, the accidental origins of Dashboard Confessional, plus that band's long hiatus and rebirth, and how the financial collapse of 2008 had opposite effects on their careers. It's true. Enjoy.
There was a meme that got circulated around, probably around the time I stopped really touring full time, because I do like one tour a year, and it's usually, or maybe like 20, 30 shows a year. It's not that much anymore, but it used to be like 11 months a year. And there was a meme that I saw toward the tail end of that. This would have been like 2016. And it's a photo of a veggie tray, a van bench seat, a 2-bed hotel room, like a liminal space hotel room, and a liminal space green room. It's those 4 images. And at the top, it said, traveling the world, but somehow not seeing any of it starter pack.
And finish pack. Somehow that's just the way it stays forever.
And so that really rattled my cage. I was like, oh my God, I've been everywhere and I've only seen the same 4 fucking things every day. And so that was kind of a wake up call of like, oh, I should go out and explore the city center if I'm, on a European tour, or like I should.
And how's it work? How's it working out since you've had that epiphany?
It's not working out very good.
Me neither, but I had the same epiphany, and it is, I'm slow to adopt it for real.
It's awful. I just hang in the club. I want to talk to the bands. Like, these are people that, that your time with them is finite. And in a lot of cases, some of these people are maybe just your friends for the duration of the tour. You don't necessarily keep up after the tour is over. So I like to try to make sure I'm getting as much quality time as possible. I love to dive deep with people and talk about real shit with folks, and maybe people like that, maybe they don't, but it's like, if I'm only going to get 30 days with this person, I want to see how much I can get to know them. But yeah, I'm terrible at it. I love watching the other bands. I love eating and drinking the beers in the back room. I love, hanging out and just being at a show.
It is my favorite pastime. Like, if I'm all grown up and still just go to a show, be with those people. That is the favorite thing that is happening in any city I'm in, is an opportunity to be at a show.
Are you a religious guy?
Not really.
Yeah, I
think, I don't know, that's a complicated question for most people, but for me, it feels more complicated.
I mean, the answer is just no, it can totally just be not really,
The answer is, I hope I'm trying. How's that for an answer?
You're not insulting me. I'm an atheist. So for me, it's no, I am not a spiritual guy in that way. And my follow-up question to this, and I'm going somewhere with this, is have you ever done psychedelics before?
No.
Okay. So one time I'm in the woods with my friends and I'm tripping. And we're talking about All sorts of stuff like you do when you're having a psychedelic experience with folks, which like, Chris, if you ever do, I would love to do it with you. But if you if you never have that time in your life, that's also totally cool. But had a realization about punk rock, like that is our equivalency of church. That is literally our spiritual meeting place. It's community driven. You're with folks from your area that you want to get together, you want to talk to, you want to share what's happening in your town, your local community, wherever you are. You're kind of worshiping at the altar of this thing that's happening for 2 to 3 hours, enjoying arts and music and whatever else, but that's the common denominator that's brought you all to this room to share that experience. And it's like, that rocked my world. It was like, oh my God, it's like human beings are such collaborative, community-driven creatures. And the name, calling it church or calling it synagogue or calling it the punk show, it's literally just different words for the same thing that derive the same emotional result and give people the same amount of feeling of either clarity or community or collaboration. So it's like, that really was a pretty eye-opening experience. And I'm still not, a religious person per se, but I would be lost without punk rock.
Some years ago, we were out on tour, and one of the guys from the opening band came up to me. He had seen that I was like just moving from place to place during soundcheck out in the venue. Mm-hmm. And he said, "This is a holy place for you, isn't it?" And I think that sums it up well. Even the venue itself is spiritual before anybody even brings their spirituality into it.
Absolutely. What is your favorite room in the United States to play a show and your favorite room to see a show?
I can't answer it. I was thinking about that this weekend because we were in Denver. We were talking a lot about the Red Rocks show coming up, which of course, how could that not be high on the list? And it is. Yeah. But it's just, I feel like it's impossible to pick a specific place, one specific place. Do you have a favorite venue?
For me, it would be the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia. And that's because that was the room that I saw every foundational performance of my life from the time I was 13 until I was 24. Like bands that are a massive stadium-sized bands now, saw them play in that room to 5 to 15 people. Saw my friends just play some of the most outrageously good sets I'd ever seen in my life. I know the people that operate the shows there, and it's always felt very like if I'm ever in town or if I return, it's always like, hey, what's up, dude? So there's this really at home feeling with that space.
You're really lucky to have that. So the place that we had when we were kids was this place called Cheers in Miami. Very small, but really instrumental in what was happening in the scene down there in Florida. Mm-hmm. When I think about the number of bands that came out of our scene, that was our scene being really geographically isolated.
Yeah, you're out there. That's like...
Yeah, we're way down there. So, the Miami, West Palm Beach, Lauderdale strip, of the late 90s, early 2000s, wasn't getting a lot of out-of-state bands. So we were making our own bands, and we were holding ourselves to that high standard because we kind of had to excel to keep it interesting, And then these bands that came up in that era, Poison the Well, and Newfound Glory, Shai-Hulud, and Dashboard further, many, many more. But we made the scene, made it kind of vibrant, made it worth other bands coming down from out of state. And that's where I saw all my favorite bands play when they would come down, Jawbox, Quicksand, things that really flipped my lid. Texas is the Reason. But the place is long gone now. So we can't go on down to Cheers and relive it in the same way. We can go to be together, all those same kids. Kids, we're all so old. Same kids.
But I do the same thing, man. It's like once that enters the vernacular, it's kind of like anyone from that world is always going to be a kid. Like,
yeah, totally.
Like if you're that, for lack of a better word, isolated from everything else, you have to create your own excitement, your own fun, your own world to survive. That's how I would feel about it. And I'm sure you feel the same way. I mean, look at where you are now versus where you were then. It's like, this is obviously something really so important to you that you've maintained a fabulous career for, decades at this point. Was there a band you were ever in pre-Dashboard or pre-Further Seems Forever that maybe wrote or recorded a couple tunes, or just maybe even wrote a couple tunes, practiced a couple times, that you wish actually had a longer lifespan than it did?
Oh yeah, the answer is really obvious to me. I was in a lot of bands before Further even. And honestly, I was in a ton of bands, similar to you. I was in a ton of bands at once, and I always have been. Mm-hmm. Dashboard became so busy, not so big, but so busy that it became harder and harder to keep those bands going with the same kind of vibrancy that I think is necessary. And what's the point of doing a band once it loses its vitality. So
Also, it's so easy to tour alone and to do it alone, especially in that era. Like if it's like if you're trying to make a living, like it's just a very easy, not easy. I mean, it's a shitload of work, but if you're seeing success in a solo career, it's like you got to chase that while that opportunity's there, you know?
well, I don't know that I made that choice. That choice seemed to be just made for me.
Interesting.
But before all the bands I was in at that time, I was in a band called the Vacant Andes, which is not a band I named. We came in as like the sixth guitar players, me and my best friend John.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, many people know this, but it was the Bone Break brothers were the guys who started the band long ago. They're a bit older than me, but Dan Bone Break being the original bass player of Dashboard, who most people would know on site anyway, is the guy who was as the bass player in the MTV Unplugged.
Got it.
Which was one of his last shows with us. Still my best friend, still an amazing musical collaborator. But we had a band that was really special. John and I have different singing styles. We have different approaches to things. And between John and I and Dan and his brother Daryl, we have some representation of what it was from the very earliest days. And now John and I came in as like fill-ins or replacements for somebody who had left. So we didn't really write our way into true existence until the later era of the band, and that was the period we never recorded. So the recordings we do have, they're a representation of the path, but they're not the true...
Like the fully realized version of what it could have been. Yeah. Have you thought about recording that stuff?
We talk about it every couple of years pretty seriously. Life is busy for everybody. That's
totally, man.
Tell me yours.
There was a band that I was in Philadelphia, and it was kind of a band that really helped create the path for me to eventually move to Chicago, but it was called Liars and Magicians. And eventually at some point the band name had changed to Motorist. And I played upright bass in this band. But it was upright bass in the way of like arts and crafts Toronto, like Do Make Say Think kind of, but like also kind of folk songs. Less like stomp clap, more like indie folk music. And we recorded the demo that we reused to getting on shows, and the shows that we got were really, really good. Like got to play with Minus the Bear and Stars and Joan of Arc and a lot of bands that we really admired. And we recorded a second demo, and then shortly after us doing that, the band broke up. And I always was so curious if that would have been a band that could have had a career beyond being like a cooler local band in Philly, but also be a band that, you know, that I could have been just a member of instead of having to be a driving force behind.
That's a big piece of the puzzle for my feelings about Vacant Andes. I love that feeling of being totally part of it and not necessarily the driver, capital T, driver of.
And I feel like it takes being that member once at least, but also maybe for a while to be like, man, I just wish I was in a band where I could just show up and play the guitar.
Yeah, be reactive. There's something beautiful about being reactive to somebody else's powerful energy.
What you were mentioning before, like you kind of got thrown into what Dashboard became, and I'm curious, where was there ever a moment in those early years where you maybe felt, obviously it's been a very long career, right?
Yeah.
So, but was there a moment in those early years where you're like, "Fuck, I'm in over my head"?
Oh yeah, for sure. But to draw a finer point on what I said earlier, you know, I was in Further and expected to be in Further Seems Forever, and hoped to be in that band forever. And I did Dashboard as a very personal art project. And I didn't expect it would ever take off in the way that it did. How could I have ever? But I didn't even expect it to take off in terms of effort on my end. I thought I would do something once, maybe one tour, and it would be this kind of like I guess it would be a companion piece to everything else I was going to do.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be the most revealing companion piece. That's where it sat in my mind. And Further kind of started to have some fracturing within the band, unrelated to where I was in the timeline of Dashboard. So when that did end, it just kind of dovetailed to where I was on the one tour I was ever going to do. It like ended like a month before this one tour I was ever going to do. And so I just sort of never went home from that tour, as it turned out.
Dude, that's exactly how Into It Over It started doing what it did. I was playing in a couple other bands that I thought would be the full-time touring ops, and they weren't my bands, but you know, Into It Over It had already finished 52 weeks, and it was just getting pressed on CD, and I was like, oh man, maybe I should just play a few shows just to see if I can sell some CDs.
Evan, I thought the same thing. I was like, I wanted to do this project. It was a good opportunity to go out and and have this, like maybe the same kind of feeling that kids get when they go backpack through Europe one time in their life, or when they do a semester abroad one time in their life, or they go teach for America or something like that. That's how I viewed this one tour I was going to do completely alone.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a instructive kind of life experience that I could take to every other bit of music I was ever going to do, and also life. But also it seemed fun. A great opportunity to have a fucking blast.
Absolutely.
It was. I was right about that. It has been a blast. But, sometimes life is making its decisions for you. Like, I don't know that I put it into the universe that I wanted to do this. I'll tell you this. I didn't throw it out into the universe that I wanted to have a band where I was the driver of the thing. That was not what any of my other bands were. It's not really what I wanted. I didn't want to go out and be a solo artist. That's even why I didn't name the band by my own name. I thought that if I didn't name it by my own name, it would be kind of inclusive for anybody that heard it, that it would enable me to have other players if I ever wanted to. And it would really enable me to do that thing where, since all of my friends were in touring bands, I could play with any of them that happened to be home.
Yeah.
And they might feel like it was okay. It's not like they're just going to, I felt if it was my name, they might say no to jamming with me that night.
Right.
But if I had a band name, it would be like a collective.
Yeah.
It didn't quite turn into that. It did for a little while, but that's not the piece that was the longest lasting. I guess the piece that was the longest lasting was that one tour that has lasted forever.
Yeah, dude, the project Into It Over got named because of the nature of the first project. And when I wanted to start writing more songs, it was like, well, I already have the name and the CDs have already been pressed, so I might as well just stick with the name of this project.
I really enjoyed watching the beginning of watching your whole career as a fan. But I became a fan of Into It Over almost immediately, like probably within that first year. I was, it got into my headphones and I became obsessed with it. And I think you gave me an opportunity to feel what other people seem to feel when they listen to my music. I don't know that we're sharing in the same territories emotionally. There's some.
That's high praise coming from you, I got to say. That means a lot to me.
Oh, I'm grateful to know that. But then to watch the arc of your career was really special for me too, because I was like, I know what that feels like.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess it's, and now I'm in a scenario where younger bands are coming out who've been influenced by stuff that I've done. And now I'm maybe on the flip side of that, because music's a young person's game. And so it's, being on the other side of that and seeing younger bands come up that have very clearly, or maybe less than clearly, but the ones that are very clearly influenced by something that I had made, which in proxy could have been influenced by something that you have made or Prior had made, or, any number of people who are kind of involved in maybe the generation that was yours. Influencing the generation that was mine, influencing the generation that was somebody else's.
And they're so short. These generations are so short.
When I say generation, it's like 5 years.
Yeah.
Like my buds who play in bands now who are starting to get successful are about to hit 30 and they're going to be the bands that are educating and informing what happens below them, the people who are 18, 19, to 25 or whatever.
As it should be.
It's very surreal. It almost feels like a brother sister kind of relationship in a strange way. It was strange, a little different for my generation maybe than yours even, because mine as touring musicians, we had a little bit more blog culture and internet culture and social media culture to kind of help carry and support what we were doing, which wasn't as prevalent in the early 2000s when I was, seeing you play. And the touring landscape has just shifted so dramatically. I've always felt that it's kind of the responsibility of the elders to help inform the younger bands to not make the same mistakes we did, or how to navigate their careers and not get, fucked by the business side of it, which I'm sure all of us at some point have gotten a taste of that. And so as you are where you are at in your career, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give a younger band just getting started now?
Well, I think it's important to work on your craft. Work as hard as you possibly can on your craft. I think that maybe looks different now than maybe when I was younger. When I was younger, that meant you have to woodshed for hours and play. That's still important, but now you have to work on the craft of communication a bit differently. You have to work on the craft of presenting yourself in every medium with crazy expertise. You have to learn how to, I guess I didn't have to learn to code, in order, as I would eventually have to with MySpace. But when I didn't know that was going to be a piece of it, I didn't know I was going to have to do social media like this. And every old guy like me sounds off at this stuff. But I just think it's important to not lose sight of the one piece in the center of it, which is like communicating your whole self through music is the main piece. And so more than I worked on guitar or vocals, and this is clear, I wasn't the best singer or the best guitar player, and I would become better over time, but I was working on the live show shared experience harder than I think anybody I knew at that time in my circles, and realized early on that was my superpower. I could be fully committed to playing as many shows as possible to get better every single time. You have to learn in real time in front of people. Finding your superpower is a really important thing that you've got to do. So that sort of ties into my first piece of advice. But work incredibly hard on your craft, but to find out what your real special thing is. And then make sure you hold on. The second piece of advice is don't lose sight of what that special thing is. Let it evolve, but you've got to keep it. Precious is not the right word, and you don't need to be protective of it, but you have to remember to find your way back to it as things get busy. You get really pulled away. Do you remember this, Evan? As you start to get so busy with the work of being in a band, there's a period in every artist's life where you kind of lose the ease of finding your way back to the most important piece of the puzzle.
Oh, is it like the ability to play? That's the thing that and I don't mean play, just even play the guitar. It's like the sensation, like we all started bands when we were teenagers because or young adults, or, it's like we started playing music and playing bands just because we loved to get in a room and be loud with our friends. Like that was literally the only reason. And I feel like sometimes you lose that ability to recognize why you started playing music in the first place.
Or what is special about your music in the first place. Sometimes you don't ever know, ever. Some artists never know what is the special thing. I happen to know early on what was special about my thing, and definitely lost my ability to find it for a while, and had, periodically, and a lot of that is situational life stuff. But in keeping with my point, life hands every one of us our own ration of shit to dig ourselves out of. And during that period, even though some of that stuff was during periods of my favorite periods of my professional life, it was really hard to get back to the centerpieces of what my songwriting meant to me. Forget other people.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring this up because I'm in one of those scenarios right now. I've been chatting a lot, and we've been chatting, and you've been helping a lot too with Pet Symmetry, and we're rolling out this Pet Symmetry record. And Pet Sim to me is the one band that has always felt the most defined. It's actually probably the best band I'm in. It's, 3 members who are universally aligned on the vision, the style, what we think makes us special. What, like you said, we've identified the thing that makes us what we are. And we've been able to really just lean into that and enjoy it. And all of our voting is done by committee. It's like a 2 to 3 majority. If it doesn't hit that majority vote, then it's like we don't do it. And it's very, there's no ego. There's a lot of give and take with how decisions are made and what the style is like and what the presentation of it is. And there's a very clear goal, and there's a very clear message of why we do this band. But I've been running into very similar issues currently with Into It Over It, and just how I feel about am trying to rediscover the spark for that project in a way that makes me feel like it's not just spinning wheels, that it's actually something that's personally driving me. That's always how it's been. It's something that is just something deeply inside of here that I just have to say. And right now I'm in a scenario where there's just nothing hitting that. There's nothing to say. And it feels strange to be not focused on that or thinking about it. I feel guilty for not having something in here, and I need to maybe check in with myself, but also just check myself in general of maybe it's just something that can rest for a while, or maybe it's something that
has to, Evan. It has to. It has to. Things have to gestate with a band like Into It Over It, where you are really mining your life experiences into song. You actually have to live the life, and you can't write concurrently to the life you're living. You don't I can't write about I've had challenging things in my life come up, and known that they were going to be inspirational and informative to songs in a way that I thought would be powerful, not just for the result of having a song, but helping me get through whatever the thing was. Or not just get through, celebrate maybe what the thing was. But it's not in the now, it's 2 years from now. It's got to live inside you for a while till it comes out as something you almost aren't thinking about anymore. And it comes out to solve your problems, or to pinpoint what your problems are, or excitements, or thrill rides are.
Yeah. I've had genuine thoughts in the last maybe 18 months about just really it might be time to just put that project to bed in general, just overall, and not in a way where it'd be like, I'd never play music again, but maybe like, that's obviously not possible. My whole world revolves around it. Like my love for music and my love for discovering new things and listening to new things and exploring new things, both sonically, creatively, like all of that's still going to drive me so deeply. It has to, right? Like it's ingrained in here, but it's coming up on 20 years. And I feel like that's a good run. Like, I'm not sure if who I am now resonates with that project and all of its baggage and lineage and evolution anymore. And that's a strange feeling, like when your whole adulthood, 24 to like 44 that's a big chunk of your life. I'm in this kind of strange scenario in my head about what's next, or taking a different path, or exploring a different path, or seeing what's next for me as a creative person. How has your relationship with Dashboard Confessional evolved throughout the years? Have you ever felt like maybe it was time to hang it up? And if you did, what was something that helped you keep going?
I did hang it up. We did a temporary hiatus for like 6 or 8 years. It must have been 2009. It was like a little bit after the crash, the financial crisis. When fund money went away, that's the first thing to go. It was like, who's buying tickets to shows anymore? It seemed like the music scene just kind of flattened. It was kind of dead for a minute. And I also had children around that time. And I think I leaned into that opportunity to be a committed father, which in our field is difficult.
Yeah.
Just because we have to leave to do work to support our family financially. But anyway, I made some choices to put Dashboard on hold, at least as a touring entity, but even more importantly, as a recording entity, as a songwriting entity. And I was eager to find my way back to Dashboard, but I just didn't trust that I was going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that life was going to lead me there again. And I've always kept an acceptance of that with Dashboard, that I have to be led to it the art has to lead there somehow. Well, I'll tell you what, when it did start leading back there and we started playing shows again, and I was ready to make some music, it was really hard to find my way back to that thing I was talking about. What is the thing that makes you special? What's your superpower as an artist? I had to write it back into existence. I had to make one kind of okay record and get that one out of the way, and then write a little bit of a much better, much more, not a little bit, to write another proper Dashboard record. I had to find my way back in through accepting that some of these songs would not be on the mark. And I had to live it. I knew that I would not only would I have to be curious about whether this was or wasn't Dashboard, I was also going to have to deal with how other people felt about that. You don't have to do that in the beginning of Into It, Over It, or Dashboard. You don't have to think about what other people are going to say about it.
You have to do that at the beginning of any band. There's nothing there. It's for you. You're literally only creating for you. See, you're on this journey and you're rediscovering yourself and what makes you you. How does that inform where you are now?
So I make this record. So I'll just name the record. So I made Crooked Shadows. It was the one that I think is not the most on the mark for a Dashboard record. That isn't to say I don't like it. And that isn't to say that I'm not proud of the songs or don't relate to the songs. It's just, I knew even in the time that this was me, the sound of a guy finding his way back into a thing. Mm-hmm. Then I made a record called All the Truth That I Can Tell. And for the first time since my second record, which is called The Places You've Come to Fear the Most, I was in this place. My first two records were all acoustic. They were very raw and revealing, emotional journeys, song to song.
A lot of it sounds like it was written all in the same time, too. Like really like a very short period of time.
Each of those first two records was written in like a 2-week period, but also they were only written, I think they were released within 10 months of each other, too.
Yeah, those two records to me as a listener felt like very much like the same story, or not the same story, but the same collection of like inspiration, just split into two releases.
I agree. I feel like that's a really accurate assessment of what those records are to each other and to me. And the prevailing wisdom would have been to do another one of those. But when it came time to follow it up, I did a record called Mark of Mission of Brenda Scar that's much more bandy, for lack of
it's fleshed out.
Yeah. But it wasn't so that I could, now I can finally do a band. It's just that whatever the wave I'm riding is like, it's not dictating that direction. And And I really wanted to be back in that place again. But I knew I had to wait for it. I didn't think I'd have to wait so long because I finally got it on a record called All the Truth That I Can Tell, I don't know, 20 years later.
Right. There's so much happening in there.
But what occurred in that time was the same kind of burst of songwriting. I think it was 10 or 12 days for 14 songs. Or maybe it was 10 days for 12 songs, whatever the amount of, it was like a couple more than songs than days.
Yeah. That was how big was. Big Symmetry. We did 17 songs in 8 days.
Amazing.
It all just flew out.
Yeah. It's amazing because it's like the shared territory of the songs are so beneficial to one another. Like how one song feeds into a song you wrote 3 songs later. It's like you're working so fast you can't think it through. When you're writing really fast, you don't even realize what you've done yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like too new for you to have like assessed
context or percept. Yeah. Like you can't even, there's not even a chance for perspective. It's just pure creation. And
gives you some beautiful freedom to use some of the same pieces over and over again. That makes I think that makes a record much more vibrant.
That's how 52 Weeks was. You're moving so fast. You're writing, because we wrote, recorded, and released a song a week every week for a year. And if I ever end Into It Over It, that's how I want to end it. I want to attempt to do 52 weeks again.
Okay, well, let me tell you what I did. I thought if I ever wanted to end Dashboard, I wanted to do, and I'll just speak of them together, but the Swiss Army Romance and The Places You've Come to Fear the Most, again, as this guy, then now in his 40s, at a different crossing point in his life that's just as powerful.
So you would re-record the same record. You would re-record them with like a.
I didn't realize that's what you meant. I thought you meant doing a companion piece of like if I so my
I would write 52
was,
new songs. I would go and just be like, we're gonna do the one song a week every week for an entire year. It's like with all of the info that's informed me for 20 years, how would we have approached that project differently, or how much more could we do? How much better are we at doing this than we were 20 years ago, or worse? It's like you kind of find out like maybe I'd be worse at doing that.
I really doubt that you'd be worse at it. I felt like if I could reach that kind of potency again and spill it out in such a simple form, which is what I think is special about those records. They're potent, but they're simple. Then that would have been a good way to go out. There was a period I really thought that was where I was going to end.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the financial crisis of 2008. Mm-hmm. And the financial crisis of 2008 is, in my opinion, what's directly responsible for the scene that I came up in. Like 2009, 2010, that was when we were like really beginning to hit the road hard, which is so interesting to hear you say that was kind of the moment when you decided to slow down. In that moment, in 2008, there was a lot of like big budget stuff happening with emo, for lack of a better word. Like bands like Fall Out Boy and it wasn't really my world, and it wasn't a world that I lived in or existed in. So it's like, but that was a very big budget time for that style of music. Bands were really like, you guys are on MTV, you know what I mean? It's huge. And that financial crisis happens, like you said, ticket sales start to slow down. And as people and money is getting tighter, as people are getting squeezed, really aggressively by the economy of the United States, people just want to go in a basement and see 5 people fucking sweat and bash it out.
Yeah, we needed it.
100%. But that was the delineating moment in which music went back to the basement. And the bands that I came up with were had created the spiderweb network across the United States to bring those scenes together and to allow a touring infrastructure for folks like myself or La Dispute or Touche Amore or the Wonder Years or all these bands, Algernon Cadwallader, like this world connecting Connecticut to Philly to Chicago to Los Angeles to Austin to Portland to Boston to that had spawned the lives of things like Top Shelf Records and Count Your Lucky Stars and No Sleep and Run for Cover. Like all of that was from the scene that had existed from that specific era, the generation that informed our generation, 2003 to 2008, to bring that into these close quarters and create our own little world for each other and have that be the rebuilding of what ultimately became. So there's something so poetic about 2008 Dashboard slowing down being responsible for 2009 Into It Over It and a series of other bands like all having careers, which is crazy to me. I've never heard anyone say something like that from your world.
Let me share some gratitude with you here. there were things I'm really grateful for. There's a couple of things in that transitional period there with this cycles of things, the changing of the guard, I guess. Okay, so on to your point that things got a little bit bloated, more than a little bit bloated, and the production aesthetic becoming so gleany and everything being so expensive and all that. I never felt comfortable in that era. And I don't think we really shined in that era. That's when I felt the most disconnected. It is not the kind of music fan I am. I prefer basement show.
Yeah.
But was really surprising to me, and I'm grateful that I had the chances I had in the beginning, that I in an era when there was much more higher expectations for how records would sound, and if they were really specified, I still did fine in those things and still connected with people emotionally, even though I was maybe a little less connected to it emotionally. Just the aesthetic of it. What I feel incredibly grateful for is, I love those bands, all those bands you just mentioned so much.
And I mean, there's hundreds more I'm sure I could mention too.
We could keep going about the bands that are coming out now that are carrying the torch, from Slow Joy to Glom and, 100 more, and Drug Church, and people that are vibrant with all this energy, and it's raw and it's powerful, and it's out of the basements, but it remembers being in the basements and all that. What I feel very lucky for and grateful for is that I was allowed back into the scene somehow. I was still embraced by, maybe not to the degree where it was me and my peers doing it, like we in the beginning of the early days at Dashboard, but I felt like I was not displaced from this new thing that was happening. It was I was really lucky for that. I feel very lucky for that.
I think you did a really good job at staying connected and interested and invested. I think it's really easy for folks as they get older and as they begin to, lives change and people, you're not as connected. Like the older you get, the less connected you get to what's going on, what's happening. You and myself, and I think a few other people who are both older than me, same age as me, younger than me, are really excited still about music and about wanting to understand and enjoy and participate in what's happening now. I would point to that and your willingness and excitement about music to be part of the reason, if not most of the reason, why everyone was really excited to welcome you into those worlds. It's like, it's very easy to be like, young kids don't know what the fuck they're doing, and just like kind of write it off and then be like, all right, well then this is not for you, old man. You know what I mean? Like
that's so wrong too, because young kids really know what the fuck they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
whether they understand it and communicate it to you like, this is what I'm doing. No, that's the beauty of it. It's just scattershot. It's just all, it's purity of intention.
100%.
I love it.
And especially now, like when we were coming up, you had to really put some work in order to discover a lot of things. Like, I've done a couple interviews lately where there's been like some nostalgia focused interview stuff. And it's like, like if you heard about a band or someone gave you a mixtape and it had a band on it, like a song on it that you really loved, like you couldn't just open up a phone or a computer and find that stuff right away. Like you had to get lucky, and maybe they have it at your local CD store or something that you could purchase it and take it home and listen to it. And then when you did purchase it and take it home, you listen to it, that might have been your allowance money or the money you got from your job, like all the money that you had. So you're listening to that record 1,000 times in your car or in your bedroom or wherever else. Like you're becoming like obsessed with that record. Whereas now, like anything you could ever want to hear is at the touch of a button. And so the music now is so uniquely informed by just everything. It's not uniquely informed by like a niche scene or a niche genre or whatever bands exist in your town or whatever like styles, because like back, I feel like when we were younger, you had a Philly style, you had a New York style, you had a Florida style, you had what Midwest emo was and became. And it's like, and that's just informed by like, who are the 30 people who play in bands in my local town that we do local shows all the time. You're just excited about what's happening around you. Now you can be excited about what's happening globally and create anything. And so young kids now, it's exciting. The music is exciting because it's informed by so much. And there's so many cool left turns and ideas and stylistic choices that are like, I think really exciting as a music listener.
I love that word that you're using because look, there's a lot of romanticizing about like crate digging and going to the record store, going to a show and seeing an opener you never heard of before, and it's going to be your favorite band for the next 40 years of your life or whatever till you die. That stuff is incredible. But I want to tell you, just as a kid, a guy with teenage kids, my son and daughter, the level of excitement they have about music is no different from what we had, even though they have, I think I worry, maybe still, about access lowering excitement. You have infinite access. And, sometimes when you remove the complications of things for art, or if you put in complications for art, it breeds better art, but also better fandom. That's what I think. And that may or may not be true, but I can tell you this, that the level of excitement remains peaked for teenage kids, and their desire to discover it themselves or discover something in the thing that everybody else gets that no one else has figured out remains really high.
Totally. And you were talking earlier about where things in your scene, your era, were like toward the end, and like how you were maybe a little unhappy, or maybe it felt like it lost the plot around like a certain period of time. It was clear to me when it got to like 2016 and the scene that I came from you could start seeing the like decline of what we had put together. Very similarly felt like, oh, maybe we have also lost the plot. All of us are in uncharted territory, which I'm sure you were too at some point in your career. It's like you're in uncharted territory and you're just like, I don't know what the right decision is. And you start having a lot of people in your ear telling you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, who you should talk to, who you should tag, how you should present your stuff, and it's like, no one's going to know your band better than you know your band.
I will say, so we never got to all three bits of advice, but I would say that if there are people that are eventually navigating that point of their career, one thing that I wish I'd known was you will have, when you rediscover or you cut through those weeds and you get through to the next period that is potent again, whatever that is, business-wise, music-wise, whatever it is, you will feel the same euphoria you felt in the early days.
Yeah.
And I think when I was reaching some challenging points in my career, I thought, well, it's just over. Like, I've got to grieve it almost, for it. What I didn't know, and what nobody really told me, was that you're going to find inspiration again. You're going to find interest again. Whatever the thing is that you're doing, if it's real honest, the thing that you stumble into the next time, it might be the same people, might be different people, but people are going to embrace what lights you on fire. Well, anyway, we took that hiatus. A lot of it was just self-serving. I wanted to raise my kids.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And I think to some degree, I probably dodged some backlash that I was probably rightly due, because that's just the arc of music scenes and all that, and you have to kind of you have to suffer that, and I did suffer it to some degree, but I dodged it a little bit because of situational stuff. All these things made it really harder to find my way back. Finding my way back was almost, I think, maybe more satisfying than finding it in the first place, and rebuilding a relationship that I decided to neglect with my fan base has been way more rewarding. Now, when I say decided to neglect, I do mean for a purpose. I wanted to go raise my kids. Yeah. And I thought that was really necessary kind of endeavor if I didn't want to resent every decision I ever made in my life.
Yeah, man. I get it. And I think most of the world would get it. It's what's more important than that?
Yeah, but I don't mean it's hero's work. It's just like the job at hand. And so sometimes life hands you whatever that job is at hand, and you think that you cannot. I think if you're in that middle point you just described, past the middle. It's probably past the middle.
Yeah.
You begin to feel as truth the idea that it's just over. And I'm just telling you from where I sit here talking to you today, the most potent musical experience of my life is happening to me here on the other side of it.
Got it. That's reassuring. You get one shot, right? Like, can I just leave this be and move on? Like, no, I can't. So I'm curious when I feel like I'm in this moment now where there's going to be a path that opens up, and it's going to turn into a decision that I need to make that would be bigger than myself. And I'm kind of in that holding pattern, waiting for what that opportunity is going to be.
Interestingly, though, your holding pattern period is so vibrant musically.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, we do a lot. We've done a lot here to take control of the reins. I think my biggest challenge with being in a band and doing it full time was the issues that I took with how the work I was doing was being supported, promoted, exploited. And that was hard for me to watch as somebody who like, this is mine. This is what this came from here. Like it was manifested out of nothing. And like, folks who are supportive and helpful and think they know what's best for me, and in some cases do, would try to tell you how to do the thing that comes out of here. And I'm pointing to my head but so like, I also think a lot of tools and knowledge and business practice and is gate kept from artists intentionally to keep the machine of the music business going in a lot of ways. And I think that the assets and the resources for any band are very easily and readily available, and are absolutely skills that not only can be taught, but can be mentored to younger artists. And so we have done a lot. Granted, we're very fortunate. We live in a city like Chicago where there's just endless resource here. It's just a great place to live. And I encourage any musician who's feeling maybe a little lost in their town, if they have the ability, to move here, because it's a really excellent place to be in a band. But we've taken a lot of that on ourselves. Like, we've built our own recording studio, and we've started our own label, and the pressing plant that manufactures our records is in the same building that our studio is in. And we keep this at a very low operating cost. Like, everything is very low operating costs, using our local scene and to produce everything that we're doing and be able to reinvest back into it, as opposed to me sending money to A to Z in the Czech Republic. I can send money to, my buddy Jake, who is our pressing plant operator, who used to sell me records at Reckless when I was in my 20s, So we've really set ourselves up in that way to be in control and to do things the way that we hope to see them done, would like to see them done. And it allows us so much freedom.
I'm going to jump in with my one last, I think this will be the third piece of advice you asked for so long ago in our chat. This is later in the arc of your career when things do get complicated. You are so right. The industry is built sort of to take advantage of the artist.
Yeah, not sort of.
Yeah, it is. But I don't even know that it's necessarily malicious for everybody or predatory or anything like that. It's just the thing is built this way, and that's how everybody's operating. And even people that just don't have malicious intent are kind of doing the wrong thing on your behalf.
Yeah.
Because it's just set up this way. I'd say in the later arc of your career, I've made one huge mistake in my career. There are usually a few people in your career that really do have your best intentions and really do know what's best for you. And it is really important to honor those relationships. And when by honor, I mean keep them in focus. I know that I had one person I parted professionally with that definitely did have my best intentions front of mind. And I in a period where I thought everybody had only their best intentions and none of mine, I had to part with some people, and I cut too wide a swath,
Yeah.
And so it's really important to continually keep in mind who has your best intentions. Now, that isn't to say they'll always be right about the thing they're telling you to do or advising, but that to recognize the people and keep them in your orbit who have your best intentions in mind and front of mind is paramount.
Yeah. And you learn more about loyalty as you go. Like, I very similarly have someone that I let go super early in my career. We were both getting started. We were both kind of learning on the job as we were going. And, but they were always like absolutely the best they could have been to me. And I got seduced by something much bigger than them, with more provenance than them, and felt in the moment that it was the right time for me to make a step upward. But in later years, have deeply regretted that decision, only because my relationships with the successor were never as bonded and, connected spiritually, emotionally, any of it. Like, it never felt like we were working on something together. And I've always regretted that.
That's very hard to replicate.
Yeah. At this point, in my life, I don't see me having a full-time music career again. So it's like, you might as well be surrounded by the folks that you love. So
listen, it needs to be said that you put out more music than any full-time musician I know, and you do it part-time. I'm very envious.
I appreciate that. I think my favorite thing to do is be in the studio. My favorite thing to do is work on music. I actually really could care less about the touring side of it.
I love the touring side of it so much.
Yeah, I love making art. And I think the performance side is cool. The performance side is especially cool with a band like Pet Symmetry, where it is kind of like, we almost talk about it like it's performance art, it's like a little far out, and that's what we dig. And it's just totally a connection of our personalities, and it's a little loose, but it's, that is what makes it exciting. Like you were talking about finding your thing. What is your superpower? Our superpower is to be able to keep the energy very light and positive at every show we're playing, and to not get hung up on the small stuff, Whereas like when I'm with Into It Over It, we get hung up on the small stuff, and it's a very, emotionally dense, detailed, and smart presentation, I would say, for lack of a better word. But also, like, we take pride in the ability to really play the shit out of our instruments. That's like the big thing that Into It Over It gets off on.
I think my superpower may be that, and why I need the live show why I'm so committed to the touring thing, is that my superpower may be that, like, I just give an opportunity for that audience to let it all go.
Yeah. And that's never been my vibe, at least with the Into It Over It shows. That's never been the power there. It's just like, which, probably extends into why the live performance part of it has never been that, like, super, it's cathartic for us, but, and it may be cathartic for the crowd, but there's never been that, like, there is definitely a wall between what we're doing and what the crowd is experiencing. It's less inclusive. And that's been a thing I've been working on course correcting over the last 7 years or so. Like, I think the Into It Over live band now is better than it's ever been. And it's more relaxed. It's definitely more inclusive, more funny, more not taking itself too seriously. Like, we still take it very seriously, but it has loosened and softened on the edges a little bit in a way that I think is important. But we were definitely up our own ass for probably about 3 years from like 2014 to 2016. It was definitely like, we had a chip on our shoulder, and I look back on that moment with a little bit of regret in terms of just like how much we felt like we had riding on something when really we didn't have anything riding on it at all.
All you're describing to me is your band's adolescent years.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have a better perspective now. But
you're just defiant teens. We all go through that arc.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be making fucking emo music.
That's right.
We'd be writing pop songs, bar rock.
I'd say, don't sweat it. Don't let yourself feel bad about that one. But the world needs us to feel bad, Evan.
It's true, man. They got to keep put their thumb down on all of us. Well, Chris, this was really, really excellent. I love talking to you. I really appreciate how excellent you've been to all the bands that I've been in, and for supplying like a quote for Big Symmetry, for getting together with me and chatting today, for having us play with you guys in Las Vegas on the 12th of July, which is going to be super fun and super hot.
It's going to be brutal, brother. It's going to be a brutal show. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to watch my hair melt.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, I expect to see all the product on your face after the show. Anyway, I appreciate you talking with me today. I appreciate Talkhouse for giving us the opportunity to chat together too.
Yeah, and, thanks to Talkhouse. Evan, I'll call you later, buddy.
Yeah, fucking hit me up, bro.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Chris Carrabba and Evan Weiss for chatting. If you liked what you heard, please follow Talkhouse on your favorite podcasting platform and check out all the other great podcasts in our network. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme was composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.